Jack Dalton had always thought his past was behind him, but one joking question would prove otherwise. The forward operating base lay bathed in the pale light of early morning. A thin mist clung to the edges of the concrete perimeter, curling around sandbags and camouflage netting, and the low hum of distant helicopter rotors underscored the quiet tension of an impending briefing. Before we begin this mission, hit subscribe and ring the bell, because some stories of courage never made the headlines, but they deserve to be heard. Tell us where you're watching from, and who's the hero in your family. Inside the metal-framed briefing room, the team assembled around a long table cluttered with maps, digital tablets, and steaming mugs of coffee. Sunlight seeped through narrow slats, striking the polished surface in sharp lines, cutting across the faces of men and women who had learned to trust instincts over instructions. Jack sat near the end of the table, a civilian consultant with the air of someone who had been here before but wanted nothing more than to be invisible. His daughter, Maya, had waved goodbye that morning with a promise to watch Dad on TV, though she had no idea of the complexity behind his calm eyes. He adjusted the cuff of his jacket, revealing a scarred wrist, a hint, perhaps, that the life he had left behind wasn't entirely fictional. Across the room, Admiral Rebecca Ice Carver stood with the precision of a predator assessing her pack. Her gaze swept the team, landing briefly on Jack with a spark of mischief she rarely allowed herself. Lieutenant Chris Bolt Emerson tapped his tablet impatiently, oblivious to the tension simmering in the room, while Chief Petty Officer Sam Grit Lawson leaned back, arms crossed, his expression a blend of skepticism and curiosity. "All right, team," Admiral Carver began, voice crisp and commanding. "We're about to run a joint exercise near Sector 7-9er. Winds are 5 knots from the north. Visibility good. Distance to target roughly 600 meters. Check-in and comms ready?" "All units copy," the room responded, voices mingling with the hum of machines and the clatter of pens on paper. Jack sipped his coffee slowly, scanning the tactical board without revealing more than polite interest. The SEALs eyed him casually, dismissing the man in civilian clothing as a consultant with good instincts, but no operational authority. Until she asked the question. "And you, Mr. Dalton," Admiral Carver said, tilting her head with a hint of challenge. "What's your rank?" A ripple ran through the room. Lieutenant Bolt smirked, clearly expecting a modest shrug or a polite joke. Jack froze, the mug halfway to his lips, the room tilting slightly in the momentary silence. He straightened slowly, eyes meeting the Admiral's unwavering gaze. "Major General," he said evenly. The words landed like a bomb. A collective intake of breath, a stutter of nervous laughter, a few wide-eyed glances swept the table. Grit's jaw tightened. Bolt literally stumbled backward in his chair, eyes flicking between Jack and Carver, trying to reconcile the casual civilian in front of him with the authority those words demanded. Jack didn't smile. He didn't elaborate. He simply returned the mug to the table with deliberate calm. The room, now electric with disbelief, processed what it had just heard. Here was a man who had held a rank higher than nearly anyone in the room, yet he sat quietly, a single dad among warriors, a ghost of past wars cloaked in ordinary life. Admiral Carver's expression betrayed nothing, though a faint raise of an eyebrow suggested amusement mixed with respect. "I suppose that explains a few things," she said, her tone dry but pointed. She tapped a pen against the table and moved to the tactical display. "Let's focus. Sector 7-9er won't secure itself." Bolt muttered under his breath, still recovering. "Did he just—" Grit leaned toward the young lieutenant, voice low. "Hawk doesn't need to prove anything. Watch and learn." Jack's calm radiated outward, grounding the room. The maps, the radios, the anticipated chaos of the upcoming exercise, it all felt secondary to the silent command he exuded. The team began to adjust, recalibrating their perception of him, realizing that experience cannot be faked. Even here, among the elite, a single statement could shift the balance of authority without a single order. The rest of the briefing proceeded with an unusual reverence. Jack contributed sparingly, but every suggestion carried weight, every observation noted. The SEALs, initially wary, began to see the sharp edge beneath the civilian facade. The room's energy shifted from playful curiosity to cautious attention. Even the distant rotors outside seemed to dip in volume, a natural pause, as though the air itself acknowledged the revelation. Jack glanced at the clock. It was 06:35, barely dawn, and yet the day had already bent around him. He thought briefly of Maya, waiting outside, and allowed himself a small smile. This world, of call signs, drills, and exercises, wasn't his anymore, but he could navigate it without revealing the weight of his past. Respect had been earned in silence, and here, quietly, it had begun again. The team moved into their preparatory positions, radios buzzing with routine check-ins. "Hawk, confirm sector check," a voice called from the far end of the table. Jack's response was precise, measured, authoritative. The sound of it carried through the room like a gentle but firm reminder. Some reputations require no introduction. As the team finalized their strategy, the sense of underlying tension began to settle into focused anticipation. The day ahead would test them, and the revelation of Jack's rank had already shifted the dynamic. Allies recalibrated. Questions about past glories remained unspoken but omnipresent. The seed of awe and respect had been planted. And yet, even as they prepared to step outside the briefing room into simulated chaos, one unspoken truth lingered. Jack Dalton's presence would change everything about how this mission unfolded, and the team had only glimpsed the surface of what he could command. The exercise was about to begin, but Jack had already secured their attention, and perhaps their cautious admiration. Next, experience would speak louder than words as Jack Dalton stepped fully into the arena of command. Experience is a quiet weapon, and Jack Dalton's had more than anyone could imagine. The sun hung low over the training grounds, casting long shadows across the simulated assault zone. The orange haze streaked the sky like fire and blood, and the wind carried the scent of dust and earth. Jack, call sign Hawk, moved among the SEALs with the calm authority of someone who had seen far worse than any controlled exercise. Each step measured, each gesture precise, he surveyed the 400-meter range that would test coordination, timing, and instinct. Lieutenant Bolt, restless and impatient, flitted from one position to another, tablet in hand, his youthful confidence bordering on arrogance. "Hawk, are you sure this Overwatch plan will hold? Seems risky at this distance," he called, eyes narrowing at Jack's deliberate pacing. Jack's gaze remained steady, scanning the field, noting every wind shift and line of sight. "Bounding Overwatch works if executed clean," he replied, voice calm, precise. "Check your sectors. Covering fire will hold the line. Adjust bearing 270 when you see the flash markers." Grit, leaning against a berm, watched silently, arms crossed. He had already recognized the unspoken lesson unfolding. Experience could cut through uncertainty faster than any digital tablet or map. He muttered under his breath to no one in particular, "Watch and learn, Bolt. Watch and learn." The team spread across the zone, rifles loaded, grenades in hand, eyes sharp and alert. Jack signaled, and they moved in synchronized bursts, covering each other in short dashes. The simulated objective was simple on paper: secure a building at the far end of the zone, but the execution required flawless timing. Jack's eyes flicked to each operative, noting posture, reaction, and hesitation. He corrected, subtly, with a raised hand or a single word. Suddenly, a miscommunication. Bolt's team veered too far left, exposing a flank that left them vulnerable. "Bolt, hold position," Jack barked, sprinting across uneven ground, hand on the radio. "Hawk, taking lead. Cover fire now." Time slowed as the young lieutenant froze, the consequences of misjudgment pressing like a weight. Jack's voice, calm yet commanding, guided the team through the moment with the precision of a man who had faced life and death countless times before. Flash markers ignited, signaling simulated explosions, and Jack adjusted the flow of movement, bounding his units back into coordinated lines. As the dust settled, the team exhaled collectively. Bolt's face, flushed with relief and embarrassment, betrayed his awe. Grit gave a nod, quiet approval passing in the space of a second. Jack took a breath, scanning the field again, the afternoon light painting his face in sharp relief. He allowed a memory to flicker, grainy images of a distant desert, explosions, and men who would never see home again. Those ghosts were quiet companions, shadows that informed every decision he made today. The exercise continued, and Jack's leadership remained invisible yet palpable. Each instruction precise, each movement calculated, the team responded without question. The younger SEALs began to understand that the calm in his eyes was earned, not taught. Even Bolt, still jittery, adjusted his tone, listening more than speaking. Jack paused for a moment, hands on his knees, scanning the horizon. "Phase 2, he called over the radio. "Advance in 3, bounding overwatch, check your sectors, covering fire when ready." The team moved, executing the drill flawlessly this time. Jack's presence was no longer that of a consultant, it was the steady heartbeat of command. Subtle glances were exchanged among the SEALs. Respect had been measured not in rank or title but in action and judgment. The legend they had only glimpsed in the briefing room now walked among them, flesh and blood, ordinary yet extraordinary. Bolt fell into step beside Jack. Quieter, his earlier defiance replaced by careful observation. "Hawk," he said, voice low. "I didn't realize. Your timing, everything. It's impressive." Jack didn't answer immediately. He kept moving, eyes forward, surveying the zone, noting wind and distance, angles and potential hazards. The lesson was subtle but clear. Respect was never demanded. It was demonstrated in moments when seconds decided outcomes. As the final markers were secured and the simulated assault concluded, the team regrouped. Faces reflected a mixture of relief, admiration, and newfound understanding. Jack allowed himself a small nod to Grit, who responded with a brief, approving smile. He felt the shift in energy, the subtle acknowledgement of someone whose experience could not be ignored. For a moment, Jack Dalton allowed the ghosts of past command to recede, replaced by the immediacy of the present. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching longer across the ground, and the team felt the weight of what they had witnessed. Words were unnecessary. Every movement, every command, every corrected misstep had left its mark. The young lieutenant, Bolt, still catching his breath, finally met Jack's eyes. There was no more questioning tone, only quiet recognition. The team, once doubtful of the civilian consultant, now understood the measure of the man who had once held more authority than any of them could fully grasp. The exercise had ended, but the real lesson had only begun, and Jack Dalton knew the next challenge would require more than tactical skill. It would demand the full weight of silent, tested leadership. The team was ready to learn just how deep Hawk's command could reach when the real test came. Legends aren't made by rank. They're forged in moments that test everything you know. The night was a velvet black, broken only by the faint glow of perimeter lights and the distant flare of a simulated city under siege. Jack Dalton, call sign Hawk, crouched behind a low wall, surveying the compound that held the simulated hostages 500 meters ahead. His M4 rested against his shoulder, the barrel steady, his eyes sharp in the darkness. The team was tense, alert, every motion deliberate. Even Lieutenant Bolt, still learning the weight of responsibility, moved with careful precision, glancing at Hawk for guidance. "Hawk to all units. Execute Phase 3. Jack's voice cut the quiet, calm, but commanding. "Copy, Hawk," came the chorus of responses, measured and immediate. The SEALs advanced, bounding between cover points, eyes on their sectors, grenades and breaching charges at the ready. Every footfall, every angle had been calculated. Yet Jack remained fluid, anticipating threats and contingencies the young operatives couldn't yet see. Admiral Carver observed from a safe distance. Call sign ice, arms crossed, eyes sharp beneath the brim of her cap. She had watched Hawk before, yes, but tonight was different. The precision, the authority, the silent command of men and women half his age. This was something that couldn't be taught in a classroom or learned on a tablet. She allowed herself the smallest nod, unspoken recognition of a history she could only guess at. Bolt faltered for a moment, misjudging a wall's cover and exposing himself to the line of sight of the simulated threat. "Hawk!" he barked into the radio. Hawk reacted instantly, sprinting to intercept, positioning his body between Bolt and danger, directing covering fire with rapid hand signals. "Covering fire on the east flank. Bolt, move left, now." Bolt hesitated, but the clarity in Hawk's voice left no room for doubt. He moved, trusting instinctively, and the moment passed without injury. The team exhaled collectively, the tension melting into a heightened sense of focus. Hawk's eyes scanned the zone, noting the angles, the distances, the unseen threats. Every element of the simulation transformed into a choreography of precision. As they reached the compound, Hawk led the breach. "Flash in 3, 2, 1. The simulated explosives detonated, and the team moved inside with silent efficiency. Hostages secured, positions cleared, Hawk's leadership orchestrated a flawless operation. The room, silent, methodical, dangerous, was transformed into controlled chaos managed with calm authority. Bolt finally allowed himself a breath. I didn't think." He trailed off, eyes wide with newfound respect. Hawk's gaze met his, steady and unreadable. "You learn from the moment, not from the rank," he said simply. Bolt nodded, understanding dawning, humility replacing the earlier bravado. The operation concluded. The team regrouped outside the compound, every member carrying a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Grit clapped Bolt on the shoulder, eyes on Hawk. "That's how it's done," he muttered, approval plain. Hawk allowed himself a small nod. Not prideful, just present, fully aware that leadership was not a title but the calm assertion of experience under pressure. Admiral Carver approached Hawk once the team had checked in. Her voice was quiet, almost private, carrying the weight of acknowledgement. "You've changed the way they see everything tonight. You've done more than demonstrate skill. You've earned their respect." Hawk simply nodded, allowing the moment to pass. Recognition was unnecessary. Action had already spoken louder than words. The team began to filter back toward the vehicles, their movements purposeful but relaxed now, tension replaced by mutual understanding. Hawk paused, allowing himself a glance at the night sky, at the stars smeared faintly across the horizon. This was the life he had chosen, balancing duty and the world beyond it. But tonight reaffirmed that experience, calmness and courage could not be hidden, even in the shadows. Maya's voice echoed in Hawk's mind, a reminder of home, of laughter and the ordinary life he cherished. When he returned to the forward base, he would be a father again, but tonight he was a leader, a strategist, a figure who had silently commanded respect without a single boast. The duality of his existence, legend in the field, father at home, folded seamlessly into one night. Bolt walked beside him, quieter now, eyes respectful. "Hawk." "I was wrong," he admitted. "I thought you were just another consultant. You run this differently." Hawk's only reply was a calm nod. Lessons had been absorbed. Trust had been forged. The team had seen the measure of a man who had long carried the weight of command and lived to teach it silently. The night wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of earth and distant smoke. The compound lay secured behind them, the simulated mission complete, but the impact of Hawk's leadership lingered. No one would forget how decisiveness, clarity, and quiet authority could turn potential disaster into precision. Respect was earned, reputation solidified, and a team's perception transformed forever. Jack Dalton allowed himself one final glance toward the base, toward the sleeping world beyond this exercise, and thought of Maya again. Duty fulfilled, lesson learned, and a life quietly balanced between the extraordinary and the everyday. The future would hold new missions, new challenges, and new moments to test what legends were truly made of.